Hey guys, welcome back to Introduction to Node.js, Express.js, and MongoDB. My name is Kaustubh Gharge, but you can call me KG. In this session, we'll be covering Project 3. So in the Project 3, we'll be building the same user authentication system that we built in Project 1, but instead of using MongoDB, we'll explore some other different databases. So I've chosen specifically MySQL because the relational database systems are used quite often in the industry. Okay, so you need to understand how to use your Node.js application that you're building with these relational databases. So in this session, we'll be covering the same concepts we covered in the previous session, that's the project 2, but we'll understand how things work differently specifically for relational databases. So user authentication system. So we talked about this. So what is user authentication system? It is a way of authenticating the users in order to give them access to your website or your web application. Okay, so there are various ways you can give the user access to the system. One of the most common ways is by using username and password. There are a few other options which I told you to explore in the previous session. I hope you did. But if you didn't, you can always explore them in this session as well. And those options are by using a multi-factor authentication or using a much more complex user authentication system that is being provided by the third-party systems like Auth0 or AWS Cognito. Okay. So in this project, we'll be covering Node.js and SQL. The requirements are, of course, you need to have Node installed. You can use Node Version Manager to install. And the next thing is you need to have MySQL installed. Okay, so the instructions are pretty straightforward. If you go to this particular link that I have added, it's on mysql.com/downloads, where you can just download the SQL version specific to your machine and get it configured according to the documentation. I'm not going to cover that in this session, the installation of that system, because the documentation is very straightforward. Instead, what I would like to do is I'd like to show you what I have already in my local system. Okay. The other SQL databases that you can use are PostgreSQL, SQLite, Microsoft SQL Server, MariaDB, Apache CouchDB, SAP HANA. So I'm choosing MySQL for a very specific reason. It's easy to get started. If you use any of these systems, the same concepts will apply as well. All right, so again, the scope is pretty much similar to the project that we worked on previously. We'll allow user to sign up and log in. The source code files are available on my GitHub page, where you can download and inspect. So without further ado, let's begin working on this project. So we'll have to initialize the project, and we'll have to create a folder like we did for the last project. So I'll just go in here and I'll just create a folder called project 3 and open this up in Visual Studio Code. And in here, I'm going to open up the terminal and do an npm init. I'm going to select all the default values except for the entry point. I'm going to name my application as app.js. Other than that, I'm fine with the default values. So it created a package.json. Right. So now we have to move ahead and install all the dependencies. So these are the dependencies that we are going to install. We'll install the Express.js module. That's the Node.js framework that we worked on in the last project. We'll also install the MySQL driver. This is the module that helps our Node.js application to interact with the MySQL server. And of course, we'll install the body parser to handle the request bodies within the Express. But before you do any of this, make sure you have MySQL installed and you have a database created with a table for accounts. Okay, so let me go ahead and clear this out and log into MySQL. Okay, so I have installed MySQL on the system, and I have created a database, a default database of Coding Bootcamp. Okay, so I'm just going to log in into it as root. All right, so I've logged into MySQL, and I'm going to create a table in here called accounts. So I have the query prepared for creating a table. I'm just going to copy it and paste it. So in here I'm doing create table if table does not exist, and I'm followed by the table name, that is accounts, and I'm defining a account ID that it will be the primary key that will auto increment, and I've set this as of type integer. I've created two another fields that we need, that is email and the password, and they both should not be null. Okay, so I'm just going to press enter, and it created the table. Okay, make sure you do all of this before installing the packages for MySQL. All right, so now let's go ahead and install these packages. I'm just going to get out of the MySQL command prompt, and in here I'm going to install the npm dependency. So I'll just say npm install -- save express MySQL and body parser. All right, I'm going to let it install, and I'll see you in just a bit. All right, so the dependencies were installed. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file called app.js, since that's the main source file that I want to run when I run this application. And in here, I'm going to declare the variables for MySQL as well as Express and body parser. So you know how to do that. It's the same way as we did for the last project. So Express equals require Express. I'm just going to copy this to save some time and reuse this. All right, change this to MySQL. And this for the body parser. I'm going to actually follow the camel casing here. All right, perfect. So now that we have initialized all of the dependencies, let us create a connection to the database. So I'll just say var connection equals MySQL dot connection, or actually dot create connection, my mistake. We'll use dot create connection, and within we'll insert the parameters for host, user, password, and the database. Okay, so the host is a local host. The SQL server is running on my local system, so it'll be localhost. So I'll say host is localhost, user is root. It's the same configuration I'm using, which you previously saw when I logged into the MySQL database. Okay, so password I've set as password. All right, and database that I want to connect is coding bootcamp. All right, perfect. Now let's initialize the Express application. So we'll say constant app equals Express, and we'll initialize the body parser. So app.use, we'll say body parser.json. let me reuse this. So I'll say, instead of JSON, I'll say URL encoded extended true. All right, perfect. Now we have to start the server and make sure everything is fine. So let me go ahead and create a server. App.listen. Here I will start on server at port 3000. Have a callback function, and we'll say console. Log. All right, perfect. So let me just quickly verify everything is in order and that we haven't missed anything. We have just declared the connection string, but we haven't made a connection to the database yet, which is fine. We'll do that in a moment here. So let me save this, and let me see if the code that we have written thus far is fine. Right, it says server started at port 3000, so that's perfect. Now let's write the code to add users into our database. So let's write the code and endpoint for the sign up flow. All right, so let me quickly make some space here and create an endpoint for the sign up. So I'll say app.post. Since this is v1, I'll just say version 1. This can always be improved, so I'm using the versioning system within the URL itself. So user sign up, and in here we'll have request and response. Alright, so let's get the email first. So I'll say var email equals request dot body dot email, and I'll use the same for the password. Alright, I need to make sure that both of these values come through. So I'll just add a check if email and password are not empty, then we'll make sure that we use the connection string that we have and query into it to add the values. So we'll say insert into accounts, and what we're inserting email and password. So remember that when we created the table inside the MySQL, we also created two columns for email and password, and that's what we're using it again. It's okay. So you have to make sure that you have the MySQL running, and also you have created the table with the specific column names. Okay. All right, moving on. So we'll just add values, and I will say question mark, and in here we'll add it as an object. Okay, the object is email and password. All right, perfect. Okay, it's not an object. I think I have to use square brackets here. Yeah, you had to use square brackets here. Okay. So we'll deal with the error results and we'll handle the error first. So we'll say if error I don't know why it added a new line. Let me fix that. We'll say response.status is of, let's say, 400, and we'll send just the error. All right. Else we'll say response.status of 200 and send user account created. All right, perfect. Now what happens if the user fails to enter username or password? Let's say if one of the field is blank. We already added the if statement, and we can just add the error handling here. So I will add a else block, and in here I'm going to say response.send please enter username and password. All right, and I'm going to end the response. And I also, I think, need to end the response here. Yep. All right, perfect. So I think this looks fine. We'll use the postman to create the new user. Okay, I need to first restart this, and I'm going to switch to postman to create a new user. All right, so I've opened up the postman and I've entered the URL. Within the body, I've added email and password. Okay, now let me do one thing. Let me send this. Okay, the server has been stopped. Let me start the server again. Let me send this, and it gives me a 500 internal error. So it says cannot read property of email. Okay, so this is a body parser problem. Let me go here. Okay, it's a body parser is correct. Okay, request require express. I don't think we need request. I don't know why I added that. Oh, okay. So yeah, okay, we made a mistake here. It's request. It's this request right here, not the request module. Okay, let me save this and restart it. Go back, and it says please enter username and password. Okay, so let's add the raw data right here. So we'll say, or let's use this form URL encoded. So we'll say email and password and send it. All right, it says user account created. Okay, so that's fine. Now how do we check if the user account was actually created? So let me create a new terminal instance and log into MySQL. And within the accounts table, let me see if that was added. Oh, select star from accounts. Okay, I'm missing this star. Sorry, the from. All right, so it added the account ID and the email and the password. All right, so that's perfect. Now we have completed the sign up process. I will have to write code for the login process. All right, let me make some space here, and it's the same way as we did in the last session. So I'm going to create another endpoint, v1/user/login, and I'm going to reuse some of this material right here. All right, within here again we need the email and the password, so I'm just going to reuse this. Okay, and like before, I'm going to check if both values were actually provided. And in here, now I need to look up the database, right? So I'll just say connection.query, and in here I'm going to write the query. So I'll just say select star from accounts where email and password are of the given value. Okay, so I'll just say where email equals question mark and password equals question mark, and pass in the email and password. All right, and then we need to handle the error and results. So let's say function error results. All right, perfect. Now let's handle the results right here. So let's say if we get results dot length greater than 0, then we will send in the status of 200. So we'll say response dot status of 200, send user logged in. Okay, else we are going to send incorrect email and or password. So we'll say else response dot send, oops, incorrect email or password. I need to send the status to, I missed the status of say 400, not 500, because it's not a server error, it's the authentication error. All right, perfect. I need to end the response, and I need to add a else statement for this if block. So let me write a if, sorry, remember the else statement. So I'll say response.send, please enter username and password, and end the response. All right, perfect. I think that is it. Let me see if everything is in order. All right, it looks fine. Let me switch back and restart the server. Okay. Let me reuse the same thing. I'll just duplicate this tab, and instead of sign up, we'll use login. Let's check with the correct values first. it says user logged in. What if I change something? What if I make some mistake here? So let's say if I say password 12, it says incorrect email / password. If I miss out on the password, it says please enter username and password. So whatever checks that we have added in here within the if and else block are correct. Okay, so perfect. That was the user authentication application that we wanted to build using Express.js and MySQL. So that is it. We covered the sign up as well as the login aspect of it. You can use the environment variables to define port and connection URL, and use Swagger to document your API like we discussed in the last session. So that actually covers our Node.js project in detail. You can use different databases if you want, not just MySQL. And I encourage you to use different databases and work with multi-factor authentication as well. Try to implement multi-factor authentication in your system. So I hope this gives a good introductory vantage point for you, where you can now navigate through the path of your learning and make sure that you master Node.js quickly. All right, so thank you for staying with me. Take care. Bye-bye.